Hi, everyone. Hello, hello. Welcome back to another edition of StarSound Speaks. This is your host, Irlianna from StarSound Astrology. This is episode 95. 95, I am alive. We are alive with the April astrology. So lots happening this month, some very dynamic energies. I'm going to be talking about kind of just some major dates and points to look out for. Things definitely spicing up by the end of the month with certain transits with Venus, Uranus, Saturn. And I also want to get into and I might just talk about this first, the eclipse points from last year, from the June eclipse, the June 20th solar eclipse, 0 degrees Cancer, and also the December solar eclipse in Sagittarius. Mars action, right? When Mars hits those eclipse points, that's when things pop. So let's get into it right now. Let's just dive in. Okay, so just to refresh, when an eclipse happens, it's like a seed that's planted, and eclipses are always about beginnings and endings, right? So a chapter of our life ends and a new one begins. The eclipse last year, and you can go back, if you scroll back, this was not on YouTube, but if you want to hear it, and I did do a really deep dive into the solar eclipse in Cancer. So let me just find that. Hold on, I gotta go find that exact number for you to look up, because it would be good, it would be very wise to review this material if you've already heard it, because it's been a year. And if you're new to the channel, definitely. So wait just a second. Okay, I'm back. Yeah, it's episode 56. You can find this on Spotify, iTunes, and there's like 8 other podcasting audio platforms, Pocket Cast, Google Podcasts. There's, pick your choice, whatever that is for you, but it's episode 56. And I'm putting emphasis on this a lot because anytime we have an eclipse, of course, it's like a solar eclipse is like a humongous new moon on steroids. And its effects, unlike a regular lunation, which the effects last for a month, this would last for 6 months, even a year, and sometimes even years out, it will resonate. So it goes across time further. 0 degrees of Cancer is where it happened last June. 0 degrees is the first sign of the zodiac. It's called a critical degree in the zodiac, because it contains the entire potential for the sign that it's in and what it can portend and what it can bring. It's like the fullness. Like I always say, it's like the oak tree. The entire mighty oak tree is contained inside of a little acorn. So you definitely want to see, when an eclipse happens at a 0 point, and especially 0 Cancer. Cancer is a cardinal sign, and it's about turning points. The United States is a Cancer country. So this one has, because we are on July 4th, right? The sun was in Cancer at 13 degrees. So, when we have all of that adding up together, it creates quite a mighty symbology. And it's interesting because the high point of that eclipse, the area of longest duration, happened over Mount Kailash in Tibet. And I get into this more, so just look up episode 56 on the podcast platforms, and you can, like I said, not here on YouTube, but just on the podcast platform, and you can learn more about it. And it's like 51 minutes, but I did a lot of research on it, but this eclipse would have a lot of import for women, right? Cancer is ruled by the moon, so it's about our homeland, women, the sacred feminine, the divine feminine, comfort, security, mothers. This is a huge, and leadership too, because Cancer being, cardinal sign, and it's in the Thema Mundi, 0 degrees Cancer. Cancer is the first sign, the ascent, the fullness of light, and the path of light and dark as it goes through the zodiac, is itself its own symbol of the passage of light and dark and the interplay of light and dark. But you think of Cancer as pregnancy and families and women and children and this birth, right? So there's this birth of life. And so it's very important that we really pay attention to an eclipse, but especially this one. We had an eclipse at zero Cancer in, well, it was in 2001, you know, and when Mars activated it, we had 9/11. Now, I'm not saying that we're going to have bad stuff happen. You know, I'm not here to scare anybody, you know, but it is definitely a wake up call. We also had one in I want to say it was in the early 60s. After JFK was assassinated, we had a huge shift in the leadership of our country. It was a big page turning moment in history, right? So that's the point I'm making, is that, you know, unlike those previous eclipses, you know, the good news is that we are now in a different era, because as we were saying, Jupiter and Saturn in air signs, after 200 years of being in, coming around in earth signs, they're in air. So there's a lot of more movement, and it's a whole different quality of life. And it's away from the heavy earth energy of materialism and colonialism. So with air signs, you know, we are thinking visionary, we're thinking forward, we have progressive new ideas. So this bodes very well. And with zero Cancer, it's women, you know, come up, and the homeland. So I'm thinking of, and safety. So I'm thinking of like Black Lives Matter, Native Americans, you know, women in general, just breakthroughs around all of these areas that are very near and dear to all of us, no matter what gender we are or race. It's just something that's all encompassing. It's the divine feminine, which exists, of course, in all of us, that sacred feminine. So huge breakdown, breakthrough, as my mentor used to say years ago. God rest her soul. I love you, Renee. She used to talk about eclipses, breakdown, breakthrough. So yes, we've had breakdowns, as we've seen with the Cancer Capricorn eclipses for the last 3 years. Like, oh my God, right? Breakdowns with being cared for, and government caring for us, and creating structures in our society that are nurturing and supportive. So that's definitely is coming up. And the reason why I'm bringing this up again is because, as I said last year, the seed was planted last June, and now Mars is going to activate that. Mars is the planet of action and courage and forward movement. It's Aries, it's dynamic energy. It's, you know, get stuff done. We're going to be talking a lot on this talk about get stuff done, because there's some dates I'm going to share with you coming up very soon where it's going to be very, very conducive for getting things done. But I did want to highlight that will happen, that Mars activation of the eclipse will happen on April 23rd. Mars will be at 0 degrees Cancer. So sometimes it happens a few days before that point. When Mars, you know, conjuncts an eclipse point, you know, we might see something happening on the 20th, 21st, 22nd, that time period leading up to April 23rd. Sometimes a little after, but figure around that point. A real turning point and a real time to move forward, right? So very exciting, right? Yeah. So like I said, listen to episode 56 and you can kind of get your head around that. And we can look to the end of the month, which happens to be, as I was saying earlier, we have other things going on and probably the most potent frame of this month is probably going to be the end of the month, which includes this date. So a lot of, I just feel yeah, it's big. What can I say? It can go in so many directions. The potential is there for huge breakthroughs with relationships, with relating to each other, with you know, how we take care of each other, how we take care of ourselves, right? Comfort, security, think of those Cancerian themes. But anyway, so just wanted to mention that about the Mars activation. There is another eclipse activation, I should just say, since we're on the topic of eclipses, and that is, what is it, on the 19th? Hold on, let me just check a second here. Okay, I just checked my notes and I do have them built in to everything here. So let me go grab that and away we go. Okay, so we're going to start with today's April 2nd, and tomorrow we have Mercury, who has been kind of floating through Pisces. Mercury's not in its most powerful place in Pisces because it's Mercury is data and give me the facts, rational, move, right? Buzzy, buzzy. Pisces is like, no, the whale coursing through the Pacific Ocean, right? The murkiness, the uncertainty, the kind of qualities. It's a water sign, so it's just going with the flow. Almost has a little Mercury retrograde-ish where things are kind of unclear, a little foggy, you know, it's like that kind of energy. But now it is moved into Aries. As of April 3rd, it will be in Aries, and that's very dynamic. It's Mars ruled. So Mercury is going to be ruled. Mars is going to be, what's interesting, Mercury and Mars are going to be, when Mercury moves into this sign, Mercury and Mars are going to be what's called mutual reception. So that's like, hey, I'm in your house and you're in my house. So there's this harmony and there's this way of working things out. So the usually combative Mars, you know, in this mutual reception with Mercury can create some pretty dynamic changes in things, but it's of a more harmonious nature because they're blending their energies. So that's going to be a great time to get things done. I've already noticed it. You know, where I have been feeling that Mercury in Pisces, you know, oh, I need to get to such and such, and I kind of procrastinated and all that. And luckily, you know, I feel this picking up, you know, but it's really, you'll see as you learn what exact time, what time zone, you can look up exactly, Google what time zone you live in, and you can actually feel that shift. And you might not even look at that exact time. It might just be, oh, I feel this, and wow, why do I feel so dynamic? Well, guess what? You know, 0 degrees of Aries, you know, the the Aries point, the GSD, right? Get stuff done. The other word, you know, get stuff done. We'll just keep it clean, right? So this would be really good for when you think about Mercury ruling sales and commerce and merchants and retail and business and astrology and taking, you know, technology even and business. You know, Mars is the businessman of the zodiac. And so very effective. There's a real effectiveness, very much effectiveness. So I use this time period. Mars is there until April 23rd in the sign of Gemini. So the spiritedness around our communications, a dynamic movement and a blending with getting things done and getting things communicated. So, you know, use this time effectively because it's definitely this nice, it's like being on a sailboat and having a nice big wind at our back, you know, moving us forward. Then April 6th, Mars, this is back to the eclipse conversation. Mars is going to be opposing where we had the Mars, no, not opposing, sorry. Mars is going to be at 19 degrees of Gemini. So why is that important? Well, this upcoming June solar eclipse on June 10th is going to be at 19 Gemini. So if you have any planets, if your sun, your moon, or any planets are at 19 degrees of mutable signs, so it's Gemini, Sag, Virgo, or Pisces, within 16 to 22 degrees, I would say, of any of those signs, you're definitely going to be affected by this upcoming eclipse in Gemini. Well, I noticed that Mars, you know, I say that Mars is that germinating seed that happens after the eclipse. Well, in this time, it's this particular eclipse, Mars is already at 19 Gemini before the June eclipse. So it could provide us with a little window, a kind of little preview of like things that might occur, right? Or action that needs to be taken. So it's maybe a little wink from the universe. So I would say keep your eye out on April 6th. What's happening in your life? And especially if you have planets and points or rising sign or your midheaven at those degrees, and see what happens, because it might be a little preview of things to come. So, and what Gemini ruling, you know, communication, siblings, neighbors, cousins, aunts, uncles, you know, the people who are next to us, right, in the extended family. It also rules writing and things, and the internet, and astrology. So Mercury is many things. So just to be aware, and on a higher plane, it's telepathic communication. So, you know, there's so many avenues and places that this can play out in. So just take note. Moving on, we have April 11th is our new moon, our new moon in Aries, and that's going to be at 22 degrees of Aries. And there, it's very, very bold. We're talking about women here. It's going to come into focus on that new moon. We have on that new moon, and I'll break this down more when we get to the new moon. I'll make a separate video, but Venus is going to be exactly square, the 26 degrees, exactly square with Pluto in Capricorn. And that can be a very intense, cathartic moment of a regenerative, transformative, talk about breakdown to breakthrough, a cathartic, emotionally toxic purging release of, like, I would say, the divine feminine over the old patriarchal ways of society and breaking free. And immediately when I did my research for this, what came to mind visually was, if you remember the Portland protests last year, in, what was it, over the summer into the fall, and they had the people for several days, you know, it got pretty ugly. And at one point there was a woman who was naked, and they called her Naked Athena. And it went viral, and a woman came in, it was the middle of the night, and all she had on was a little knit cap and nothing else, even barefoot. And there was like shattered glass. I mean, God bless this woman, you know, her feet. I'm like, oh my God. And it's Portland, it's cold even in the summer. Anyway, she came out on the street and she just sat there like 50 feet or whatever away from the National Guardsmen, you know, who all had their gear, you know, helmets and such and whatever. And she also had a face mask and a hat. And that was it. And she just sat there, and she, with her legs open, like this womb giving birth position, like sitting up, like as if she was giving birth. And she just sat there, and it was unbelievably vulnerable, right? Talk about that. Just here you are, stark naked. So they called her Naked Athena. And I thought that was really interesting. Well, if you think about many countries in the world, we have in the United States, and especially in the 19th century, there, you can look up these old images of Columbia. That was like the divine feminine representative of our country. Britannia, you know, for the UK. And in France, it's Marianne. So if you're familiar with the currency of France, you know, and I think it's even on, is it on here? I remember when I was in France, there were these beautiful full color, the paper currency. It was Marianne was on the, you know, and she was of course bare breasted because it's the French, you know, come on, you know, and she's leading the troops. It was this Revolutionary War era motif of the French Revolution. And she is, you know, nurturing the country and standing guard to protect the homeland. And she's, you know, valiantly, kind of like Washington crossing the Delaware, you know, for us Americans, but it was in their scenario, it's this naked woman with this, you know, carrying the banner, liberté, égalité, fraternité, right? Liberty, equality, fraternity, of the motto of France and the French Revolution. So there's this valiant woman. So I think of that with this energy that's coming up on the new moon. It's really going to be a really dynamic time for women and the divine feminine energy to just, and there might be some intense moment of catharsis which occurs that spurs and brings this forward. And this is going to be a theme that we'll see, you know, and I'll give you some more dates and information on that, but just wanted to say, you know, I think about the banking, you know, with Venus also rules the banking system, and the elite, Capricorn, Pluto and Capricorn is like the ruling oligarchy, you know, the Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates and all these oligarchs that control so much money, the billionaires of Wall Street. So it's like the divine feminine. Are you taking care of us? Is this how we're being nurtured? You know, it's a square. So it's a conflict, and it's something that needs to be worked out. But I would say the banking and the elite, you know, the monetary system taking on the powers that be. And do these reflect our values? So yeah, so you could be seeing some interesting things happening then. Women taking on that decaying system of this system does not take care of us. So anytime you have Pluto, think catharsis, breakdown to breakthrough, explosive, toxic releasing, transformative energies, regenerative. These are always the key words that you want to look at. A regenesis, a resurrection, a renewal from death to life coming up, the phoenix rising from the ashes. So these are all very powerful keywords for anytime you see and hear Pluto. You got Venus squaring. The women, we're taking it on, right? We're taking on the system. Venus is, that'll happen April 11th is the new moon. So the entire new moon lunation from the middle of April to the middle of May, when we get the next new moon, it will have that signature element. Now, it will cool off a few days later because Venus goes into Taurus a few days later. So Venus in Aries is in, that's in her detriment. She doesn't do well when she's driven by, obnoxious men telling her what to do, right? This does not work. But it provides valiant women. It provides bold and courageous women and a stand for the values and the things that are dear to us. But when Venus goes into Taurus, that's one of her home signs. She's at home in Taurus and Libra. So, there's more of a sweeter connection and a calming down of those ferocious energies. So it will start in that intense way, and it can work its way out in a more even fashion, I would say, when it goes into Taurus. And it's usually there for about 6 weeks in a sign. All right, April 12th, we are back to that conversation about the eclipse. This time I'm talking about the December solar eclipse that happened in the last December. And that was at 23 degrees of Sagittarius. Well, Mars is going to oppose that point. It's not lining up with that point, which was as I was saying before, Mars will either line up or conjunct a point, or it will oppose a point. And that's where we look at, is it conjunct or is it opposing that magic point? And when, and we look at that to give us some clues. So Mars in opposition in Gemini, opposing an eclipse, it might be a war of words about truth coming out. The galactic center of the galaxy, which is also called the 26 Sag, it's called the whistleblower point. I've heard it referenced that way, and it's about truth. And so I think about investigative journalism, people, and we're taking down this kind of arrogant base where it might be taking down arrogance and around the truth, and maybe where things had been not shared. Information, Gemini, it's interesting. I think of, with COVID, for example, Gemini rules the lungs, so we might be finding some combative information that maybe the elite that Sag would represent, the people in higher places of power, there might be some resistance. There might be some news coming out that is showing us like maybe this isn't, maybe there's more that we don't know. And I would really consider that very strongly, because when I think about it, the eclipse on last December, that was the first day that the COVID vaccines were administered. So when you start a big project in the middle of an eclipse, there are things that we're not going to know, because why? The luminaries, the sun and the moon. The moon's blocking the sun. We don't have all the facts. There's something murky. And if you read and, you see this, it's very clear in the news media. Well, yes, you get vaccinated, but you might still get COVID, or we're not really quite sure. And what about the variants, And so there's a lot of unknown that we're still dealing with. And so the Mars opposition on April 11th might bring things to light that might have been pushed aside and maybe marginalized. So, and it might be some combative information. With Mars there in Gemini. So this is something to be aware of. Of course, that's just one example of where it might play out. But again, it's, an opposition is like saying, hey, we need to integrate. There are two sides here, and we need to come together and find some common ground. And we want to work and make an effort, Mars energy, to communicate, taking a strong stand for beliefs and introducing other beliefs, right? Gemini, other points of view, being fluid with our thinking and our actions, and not being so rigidly like south node, so Sagittarius, you know, this is the way it is, and kind of like an arrogance about it. So there's a lot that's going on there that this eclipse opposition is asking us to look at. April 12th, we have, I'm sorry, that was April 12th. Yeah, so it might be a battle for the truth, Mars, you know, in opposition to that Sag point. We shall see. A battle for truth where in your life, you know, where if you had if the eclipse did touch a sensitive point in your chart or near a planet, then it would be, again, bringing this up, asking you to really look at things and be brave about it, and maybe carve a new path, and take a new path of regarding information and communication with others. So that's that. And now we've got another great, on April 16th, we have Mars in Gemini is making a nice trine, which is a very favorable aspect to Jupiter in Aquarius. So a trine has the nature, the feeling of Jupiter. So that's beneficence. It's a lot of luck and opening and ease and grace and opportunity. And with Jupiter in Aquarius, well, and it's all, both Mars and Jupiter are making a sextile, which is a very favorable aspect, with Mercury and the Sun. So they're shining a lot of light on, you know, communications. It's a very powerful place about getting things done and achieving big things with Jupiter. You know, that's massive. Mercury is going to, so again, this is another great period, you know, in around April 16th, where Mars in that trine for getting things done. There's a lot of forward motion. Mercury is going to be in that throne room. We talked about Cazimi, Venus being Cazimi in the last podcast. Cazimi is right in that throne room, right in the heart of the sun. So you've entered this room full of light and you're standing in the presence of the sun and you like lose yourself. So we can't see Mercury when it's that close in the sun. And it's in its own little initiation process. But Mercury Cazimi at 29 degrees of Aries, that's bold, right? Aries, Mars energy, that's boldness. And that's an enormous amount of fire. And the fire of fiery words, literally, you know, communication can be very fiery, very, you know, I think about a courageous person, a bold, courageous warrior of truth. It could be a Mercury Cazimi there, especially with the trine to Jupiter, you know, like talk about the truth coming out, people standing up and being heroes, about speaking the truth. The only thing you would, you know, oh, the Jupiter, you know, it rules the elite. So when I was doing my notes, I thought of that, you know, the Billie Eilish song, was it was from that movie. It was on sexual harassment, the true story of, was it Megyn Kelly? You know, it was Fox, Bad Guy. Bad guy, bad guy. I'm so bad at singing, but anyway, you know, that song, I'm a bad guy, you know, that's what came up with. I don't know where these things come from, but you know, what possibly, that was the connection I was making, because the shadow side of Jupiter would be careful. Mars and Jupiter could also mean a real arrogance, and you know, I think of Jupiter as like, can be a sense of entitlement. So, whoa, just like, you know, the Fox News chairman, Roger Ailes, you know, he thought he was entitled to look up girls' skirts and, you know, harass women and make sexual advances. Not, right? So Mars could be very combatively taking on arrogant people or the establishment or the media, the higher, you know, this, when you think about very established media elite, so to speak, with Jupiter there. But in terms of our own world, it's certainly a great time to get things done. And Jupiter being in Aquarius is, you know, building this wonderful visionary society. Our communications and our contacts is about this humanitarian place where everybody works together and we're all accepted, no matter what gender, race, spiritual background or no background, you know, that we're finding common ground in which to expand our consciousness. So so that's April 16th for you. But it's very good for productivity, for getting things done. No more butt dragging. Then not with that. This month of April, there's a lot going on. Okay, as I said, April 23rd, Mars in Cancer, eclipse activations. That April 22nd, 23rd, 24th is really potent. And look and see where Venus will be conjoining, lining up with Uranus and Taurus. Uranus is in Taurus at like 10 degrees. So Venus is approaching this point. And Venus conjunct Uranus, talk about fighting for women. Oh my God. And relationships too. Venus is about our relationships, our marriages, our one-to-one contacts and counseling and relationships with others. So this is about the need to be free and break through of old, stubborn, maybe patterns of relating and how we've been relating, and moving into a more enlightened way. And it might be a very radical, revolutionary way of relating. So embracing that. That's the 22nd. The 23rd, next day, is that Mars activation. So between Venus conjunct Uranus and Mars in that eclipse point in Cancer, boy, that's a lot of girl power. Let me tell you, it's intense. So fighting for safety, fighting for comfort, for food, for home, for women, for the sacred feminine. It's like, the homeland, I think also of those people in Brazil has gotten COVID so bad. If you've read the headlines, it's just heartbreaking, and my prayers go out to them. And I think of also the poor people in the slums. The slums in Rio are so huge. They've done documentaries about them. And then there's, the native peoples of Brazil, the indigenous peoples whose lives have been threatened by those dams they're cutting down the rainforest to run these silly dams and destroying some of these tribes have never been contacted by humanity. They've just for eons lived uncontacted. It's like the last uncontacted tribe on earth has now been contacted, and it's scary. So talk about homeland being threatened. But this is an emotional time. It's a great catharsis. So these are some of the themes that, come up for me when I, contemplate these. The 24th of April, Venus is going to be squaring. So first it's going to be conjunct Uranus. So it's like, whoa, we're free, or let's break free. But right after that, it's square Saturn. So that can be like, okay, let's just hold the wire here. Okay, I know we all want change. Saturn is nicely in Aquarius. We want change. It's going to help everyone, but we want to be smart about it. We don't want to get too crazy. Venus conjunct Uranus could be a lot of impulsive energy. You might walk out of that relationship that you're fed up with. And and it might be around your home life or home living situation with Venus. So be careful to keep a cool head and don't rush and impulsively react just because you might not like a situation that you're in or a relationship that you're in, to really keep a cool head, because Saturn's going to make you do that. It's like, okay, not to change, but you want to do it wisely and plan it. Think about what you're doing, because it's going to have long-term ramifications. With Saturn stepping in, it's like, let's think about down the road a bit. How's this going to work out? So there's that little dynamic tension. Let's see. Oh, I would say too, here's one way that it might look, running out in the street and kissing somebody without a mask, Venus conjunct Uranus, we're so free. Not a good plan, Saturn is saying. Doing the right thing, okay, girl, slow down, like, hold on, cowgirl. Hold on, mermaid. You just, woot, okay, we love you, and let's be smart. Let's have this change be lasting. We don't want the fizzle firecracker. What's that thing at the 4th of July when you light that little stick, the fizzler, the sizzler, whatever, those sticks, as kids, I always think of Uranus energy as that you light it and it just goes boom, and it's not a slow burn that builds. It just immediately starts fizzing, and it's bright, and it kind of like the sparks fly, and you're kind of like, oop, I don't want to get a spark on me. And then it immediately goes out. That's Uranus energy. It's like here and gone. So again, just tempering our desire for freedom with, being smart about that. You know, but Venus is like, you know, to square with Saturn might be, don't you suppress me. Don't you stick me in don't you isolate me, you know, so be aware, right? Let's see. So April, yeah, and I would say too, yeah, okay. So April 23rd to May 11th, Mars is going to be opposing Pluto. Mars in Cancer is going to oppose Pluto in Capricorn. I'll talk more about that later. I won't get into that. For the June 10th solar eclipse, boy, talk about reinventing our homeland, whatever homeland we're in. Wow, that's going to be cool. But I'll save that for another talk. You know, Mars is considered in its detriment in Cancer because Mars is angry, red, fiery. You know, it wants action. It wants its spears and blood and guts and, you know, bing, 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 speed and it can be violent. You know, it's the god of war. So the god of war doesn't do well in a watery Cancer sign. You know, the warrior is like, all right, man, let's kick some ass here. You know, but Mars hosted in Cancer, the moon is hosting Mars. You know, when as of April 23rd to May 11th. Funny, isn't that Mother's Day? It ends on Mother's Day. It's like, oh, okay. Let's see. Can I get you a little pillow? Would you like a little cup of tea? A cushy pillow to sit on? You know, no, damn it. I want change. I'm like, well, let's take care of you. But I would say that's good because I was a little nervous with the fact that the Derek Chauvin trial is supposed to end. The George Floyd, the guy that, you know, on trial for homicide of George Floyd. Is it homicide, second-degree homicide, or is it just manslaughter? But anyway, that the trial is supposed to end around the end of the month. So it made me a little nervous at first, but then I thought, you know what though? If you're going to have, if Mars were in Aries, I'd be very concerned. But Mars being in its quote detriment in Cancer, maybe that's a blessing. You know, it'll work in a different fashion. It will have the energy of mothering, you know, around that. So fierce stand for security and protection and care, you know, and so there is that going on where people will feel a challenge to be brave and to be courageous around taking care of ourselves and families. You know, I say that it's a breakthrough. You know, I think that our actions, instead of being, you know, just angry and rageful, it's like, wait a minute, we can put in our vulnerability and our emotions and our feelings and let our feelings and emotions guide our bold efforts. And it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to take action coming out of vulnerability, coming out of a soft heart space. So these are some of the things that are available to us as I see it. Then at the end of the month, we have a couple more things. April 26th, we have our full moon in Scorpio. And again, I will be doing a talk on that, you know, separate. That should be interesting. Mars in Cancer and the moon's in Scorpio. So again, there's mutual reception, you know, oh, Mars is in the sign of the moon and the moon's in the sign of Mars. So again, mutual reception, blending energies. So that will be a very dynamic time, especially with, again, getting things done and regenerating ourselves and our homeland, you know, the ability for transformation at the deepest core levels. I would say toxic relationships might be exposed with the new moon and a full moon in Scorpio at the end of the month. That might blow up, and it might be a need to, there's some outbursts, emotional outbursts, or things that need to be purged and let go of. But again, don't focus on the breakdown, the ugly, gutsy stuff. You have to remember, after all that cools, there's an opportunity for growth, like the grass that grows after a volcano blows. It's the richest soil, and the most vibrant color green comes up. So focus on the new life, not so much on the yucky stuff. We have to keep our perspective on all these things. April 30th, the last day of the month, sun is conjunct Uranus. So the sun shining its light on all this desire for change and letting go of our possessions and our values and the ways in which we value ourselves, of old stuck patterns, stagnant patterns, and to release and be liberated by, I would say, getting rid of our stuff. That would be a dang good time to have a garage sale. Get rid of your stuff. If you open your garage door, you cannot get in, not because your car is there, because everything else is, might be a good time to, clear, right? It's in the Northern Hemisphere, it's spring. In the Southern Hemisphere, it's fall. Hey, weather's still good. Go for it. Get rid of that stuff. Okay, I think that's all. Yeah, that's all for now. And I hope that's been useful to you. Always a pleasure. Let me know what you think and how your day and week are going, and what you hope to get done for this dynamic month of April. And I love to hear from you. You can always like and share this video and leave your comments below. It's always great. And I think that's all for now. So anyway, thank you all for listening so much. It's always a pleasure. And I send you, let's see, let me think of something that I can send off. A nice little beautiful prayer, kind of meditative send off. Let me think. Okay, I found it. Okay, I tuned in and I got to share with you. It's a beautiful mantra. It's a Sanskrit mantra. And I will read it for you so I have the exact pronunciation. This is from the, I love Deva Premal, but really any chant artist, you'll see them on YouTube, all different variations of this, different melodies. The one I love is from her album, Tibetan Mantras for Turbulent Times. It came out a few years ago. Deva Premal doing, but it's for healing. And I think of the Divine Mother and healing when I sing this. So this is a great mantra for the dynamic Aries energies of this month. And the eclipse activations in Cancer. It goes like this. Tayata Om Bakanze Bikanze, Maha Bikanze, Raja Samangate Soha. So if you want to just jump into YouTube, and you can even just type the words Om and then Bakanze, like Bekanze is an alliterative thing. So you can find it there, many variations. But anyway, I just wanted to leave you with that. And it's always a pleasure. So yay. Okay, until the next time. This has been episode 95, and we are alive. Thank you so much for everything. This is Irlianna Samsara, StarSound Speaks, StarSoundAstrology.com. Thank you, and have a most blessed month of April. Namaste.